I may be on and off camera depending on my connection. We're live, guys.
Yay!
So we're here with Kira Ellis, and she's an animal intuitive, and we're going to be asking her some questions about animals. Imagine that. You could go ahead and introduce yourself and say anything that you want to about what it is you do, and then I could get into the questions if you want to do it that way.
Okay, I'm Kira Ellis. I work with people and animals. I have a website and a YouTube. YouTube is Kira and the Secret Life of Animals, and my website is intuitivepetcare.com. And I just I work with. Sorry, I'm distracted by so many people.
That's okay. There we go. She's off cam now.
But yes, I help people understand themselves through their animals, and I help reconnect the different parts of themselves that they've disconnected from through emotional trauma through their animals. So their animals are those pieces.
I love that. That's a good way of putting it. That's interesting. Okay. So then my first question is, I saw that you have a background in the veterinary field, more Western medicine oriented. So how did you start coming into the whole holistic field with this?
I started out working as like a kennel technician and thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be a vet tech. So I'm gonna work on the technical end of it because I loved science and things like that. So, and then after a while, I started wondering like there are these aggressive animals who would come in, and I'm like I'm obsessed with patterns, like drawing patterns of things, and I was like, I wonder if it's reflecting their owner. So then I was like, So I just kind of just started to observe, and then after a while, I just kept hitting a dead end on, like, there was actually a time where I got into, like, several car accidents. Like, it was the universe's way of saying no, like, get out. So I basically rerouted, and at that point, I got pregnant. And so that's whenever it kind of put me on my path with what I'm doing now with animals. And really, I created the name Intuitive Pet Care in 2011. And then I started giving readings to people and like, hey, is this real? You know, like, let's just go with it. And then it just built and built and built until I started to get all of this kind of information from all the readings. And so, yeah. I mean, that's the best way I can just explain it. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like it was bound to happen one way or the other. So that's interesting. Okay, so what's your basic MO? Like, can you walk us through what a typical reading would be, whether it's distance or how do you even begin?
Like, so you're asking, sorry, it kind of like went out a little bit.
Oh, did it glitch? Basically,
Okay,
how do you begin a reading, or what do you do if you're doing a home visit or a distance reading? Where do you begin? Do you talk to the human first, or go straight to the animal, or how is it that you start?
I just kind of go in and I'll ask what the person is wanting to know about their animal, and then I just let it go from there. And whenever they start talking, I'll start picking up information, and then I'll talk back to them. So it's kind of like this back and forth conversation that just ends up being like a sort of it seems like it's a conversation with the animal in the room. If I'm doing a house call or whatever, or if it's a pet who's crossed over, then I'll just kind of go off of any information visually or feeling wise that I'm getting, and just kind of it just rolls because I don't really know what's going to come up in the reading. But
Yeah, can be tricky sometimes, I bet. I like that though. You're literally going with your intuition. And so
Yeah,
I'm sure it's
yeah,
hard. I mean, I'm sure one case is very different from the next and the next, which is actually pretty exciting, I would think. And
yeah.
makes it interesting.
It's a wild ride
I, one
sometimes.
one
Huh?
thing that I'm curious about is if we actually name our pets, or do they tell us what they want to be called? Is there some part of them that kind of projects it into our conscious?
That's a good question actually. I feel like everyone hears it right. I mean, of course there's like kids who like to name their animals Donut or something.
I
Um,
don't.
I mean, in that case, because the animals aren't really attached to names, they're just kind of they. So whatever it is that if we're happy with it, then it's in alignment. Like they'll respond to it because what
Mm.
happens is when we're in alignment with the happiness of a name or whatever we are associating with them, then then they respond to that particular vibration that you connect with them on. So
Wow. Okay, so it's a little bit of both almost.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm. That's
yeah.
really
So
nice.
if you end up like saying, oh, I want to call my animal like some name of a galaxy, and the animal, and it feels good to say that. Because it feels good, the animal will love to respond to it because they know that it makes you happy.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I love all these answers. They're just like they're so perfect for, yeah, I don't know. I'm an animal lover too, so I'm just soaking it all up.
Animals
So
are
a
awesome.
lot. Go ahead.
Animals are awesome.
Oh yes, I think everyone here agrees. Watch this one person. I hate him. What am I doing in here?
I'm so glad everyone's here, by the way. Yay.
Yes, welcome to the new people. Enjoy.
Hello.
So, I'm curious about something else. So, a lot of us have multiple pets, whether they're cats, dogs, birds. Do you feel, I know that you feel that our pets come to us kind of on a mission and to help us throughout our lives. Do you feel that when they're in groups, they work towards that mission together?
That's a good question too. I like that. I have seen situations where there might be two animals who work very closely together because their missions complement one another, like, and they feed off of one another. Um, and sometimes these particular animals may die in close proximity to one another. Um,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, so there's joint missions that happen sometimes with animals. I haven't seen like a tried mission. It's usually I either see like a two animal. I mean, not to say that it can't happen,
Mm-hmm.
but um, because I've done family readings like with like several animals, and I've seen where each of them feed into one another's like mission. Like
Oh,
if for instance, like if one animal is like helping someone really like receive affection. So they're always at their side. They're always like loving on them and their heart.
mm-hmm.
Then there's another animal who's kind of like standoffish, who's kind of like over there and like very independent and going on their way. Then what happens is how that works together is as the person might not feel comfortable being so standoffish, but it's like so those two animals represent two extreme opposites, so they're actually pulling the owner into balance.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I've experienced this myself, and I didn't ever think of it like that. I just thought they were brats. I just thought they were being opposite to be bratty. Okay. There's the science behind it. Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love
So basically, like what happens is whenever a person is maybe too disconnected from their heart and they need a lot of love, then one animal, the independent animal, will retreat, and the other heart animal will go and be in their face or maybe have behavioral issues. Because usually when we're needing one aspect of ourselves, an animal will come forward, whether it's contracting an illness or a behavior or just like loving on us a lot.
Interesting. Hmm. That reminds me of I don't know if you've heard of this, but I've heard that cats will purr on the areas of your body that seem to need the most healing, whether it's an injury or a chakra or something like that. Have you heard it? Have you witnessed this or seen any of that?
Yeah, animals or cats especially are very. I mean, dogs can be that way too because some dogs are cat-like. But cats especially, they have this way with energy that they'll gravitate to a spot on the body, and it's as if they're kind of like energetic housekeepers. So they'll take things and they'll absorb things and they'll move things, or they might patty cake a spot because they need to break up the energy because the energy is like stuck. So then they'll either absorb it or break it up. That's what I've noticed them do.
Wow. Okay. So they're literally breaking up the blocks and the stagnation.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're helping, especially like if you and whenever they do patty cake or they're purring, the purring, that vibration can actually send a nurturing vibration in there and really calm the energy enough to loosen it and break it apart.
Right. I heard the purring is really, really helpful for those areas. It helps. They're trying to resonate and all of that. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Okay. You could be blunt with us. Who's better, dog people or cat people?
Oh.
I'm gonna ask the hard questions, guys.
Who's better? I did
John
that.
says dog. I agree.
Dog, yeah, dog. Yeah, I have so many different like clients who are either most of the clients I've worked with are dog people.
Hmm. I would think it would be the opposite, seeing as how like I don't ever know what a cat is thinking. I think a lot of us don't know what the cat's thinking, so I need a mind reader to tell me. That's for sure. I feel like with my dogs, at least, I feel like I understand most of what they're trying to say because they wear it on their sleeve. But cats are a freaking enigma. Yeah.
Yeah, cats are different. I mean, some of them can be super like playful and like kind of dog-like, and others can be very withheld and like turning their back to you, like ugh.
Hmm.
So.
Oh, we're getting some votes in here. Dogs, cats. Oh no. They're fighting like cats and dogs.
It's interesting. What I've noticed is that dogs seem to have the energy of dogs are they're very social creatures. Like so they either can like be in someone's life because they're they're pulling out the social part of someone, or or they're actually helping to fine tune it. And then there's always the cats people that it's more like kind of cats represent intuition. So it's kind of like cats are helping to either fine tune intuition or balance out. They can even balance out social people, social anxiety and things like that. Because cats can be more introspective. I don't want to like lump people into groups because cats can be dogs and dogs can be cats and they can be in the wrong body.
That's very true. Yeah. That solves the argument, guys. Cats could be dogs and dogs could be cats. It's all equal. They're all equal.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Okay, what would you say would be the most common thing that most pets are trying to communicate to their owners? Would you? Oh, we have an echo there. Would you say that there's some kind of common theme that the animals are trying to beat over our head? Or, yeah, I just wondered about that.
That's an awesome question. I love all your questions. So the biggest message that I see coming up over and over in the readings is um, animals really wanting us to do what we love. I mean, that's they want us to be happy. They want us to know how loved we are because they came in here to show us these things, to either pour love into us, because that's the thing is with animals, we can receive the love without any walls in the way. Like, it's just a full door open of love with animals, whereas people, kind of scary, you know, animals are just, they provide a safe space. They are the gateway, the safe gateway to walk through into the other side of an issue that you otherwise cannot do on your own. Like something, I always use the example of maybe affection, having issues with touch. You know, you might have an animal that comes in that's always on you, you know, and so you otherwise could not have it. And this animal introduced you to what it feels like to always have that. And so whenever they leave the earth, then you have successfully, they've held your hand through the gateway of that fear, and then they leave so that you can so that you can let the world hold your hand now.
Wow.
So,
oh my goodness. That just blew everyone's minds, I think. Like, I just thought they wanted me to pet him, all right. They have a much bigger mission than that. He said deep.
it is. How would you know?
No.
Huh?
They're having fun in the chat, deciding who's better.
Oh, I will say, like, the standoffish animals, you know, we have that. The standoffish things, it's kind of like they're almost, it's different because it's kind of, you know, it depends on what they're helping you with and why they're being standoffish, because sometimes they'll retreat their energy because it's like, some people, and that can actually bring up abandonment issues for us whenever an animal retreats themselves and their energy. And so they work with us on those hard levels too. Like, it's not always like fun and happy with animals. They can be equally as triggering as any other person.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, not all fun and games. It's all like healing and learning and all that. It goes so much deeper.
Yes.
Wow. That, I guess that kind of leads me. It kind of leads me into the next question. Do you are you able to kind of tap into any sort of animal, and do you find that any are harder to kind of crack, like a bird, a reptile? Is there any sort of a difference between trying to tap into them as versus more common pets like dogs and cats?
So I've noticed that the harder it is for me to read an animal is because the person associated with the animal has mental blocks.
Oh.
Because so if the owner is having reserves and they're in their heads a lot and they're not, and they're kind of like, oh, this is the first time I've had a reading, I don't know, oh, you know, that can actually block my ability to go in.
Wow. Okay. So they both kind of really have to be on board in order to get a really open reading. That makes sense.
Yes, because I've had situations where it was really hard and it took some time and it felt like I was hopping over like barriers trying to get and it just took a while, you know. People.
So basically, the story is just if you want a reading, you better be open for one, or else they're not going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah, I've had clients who have husbands who want to be involved in the reading, and I tell them, I'm like, was that their idea? You know,
Was that their idea, or are you forcing them in to the therapy session?
most of the time, the guy kind of wants to have it as his idea, and it's usually that the wife is really excited and wants their guy to be in on it. You know,
Right.
at that point, I'm like, okay, well, make sure that they're really open to it. You know, open-minded, because some people. I've literally had a session where like the guy was sitting there like this.
Oh, that's the worst. That's gonna put that wall up. Oh no. Wow.
Yeah, it happened. So it was interesting. It's been across the board so many different readings.
Wow. Hmm.
Good question. So I love when people ask me questions.
I was trying to think of some a little more interesting ones, and like your usual ones. I try to get a little creative with them. And I'm sure I hope it's stuff everybody's interested in. That I'm interested in this. Like as far as I'm curious about deceased pets, the pets who have crossed over. Now, do you think that we'll connect with them again later on in life, or do you in other lives? I would say, if you believe in reincarnation.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I believe that they come back. I'm not so sure how I don't feel that they come back like right away. They
I've
may
heard
not
that.
come back.
Mhm.
It may be several years before they come back. Because it's kind of like someone who's completed a mission and hey, I'm at peace with parting, and for them to come right back down, it would
It
be
would make sense, yeah.
it would be defeating the purpose, because oftentimes death will bring up emotional things to be felt for people, and so that person wants something to hang on to so that they can avoid feeling that pain. The security that their animal has already come back to them. You know,
Hmm.
they feel like their animal left them. And it's never the case that they don't want to. They're not leaving us, because the love is eternal. And that's hard to get whenever you've lost a piece of innocence in your life, because animals are. It's kind of like reconnecting to a very special part of your inner child that you haven't been connected with for years upon years, and then them leaving, it's very hurtful. It hurts. So
I've
yeah.
noticed that that's true across the board. It seems like when someone loses a pet, the grief. I'm not comparing grief to other sorts of grief, but it's very deep. It's a different kind of grief. Um, One that yeah, exactly, goes very deep, and I think a lot of us, we go, okay, where are they, what's the sign that they're still around? And like you're saying, they just always are. You can't really focus. And that was really my next question, is how have you ever seen a deceased animal leave signs for their owners, or how can they communicate with us after they've passed when they're ready to?
So I feel like there's many different ways that spirit can communicate, and this can even be um, non-animal, or I mean, some people believe that there are just animal spirits, but I feel like spirit is spirit is spirit.
Spirit is spirit, right?
And so when spirit is communicating, I almost feel like what happens is there's this kind of like a wind pushing things and kind of like guiding things, and it's almost like um, I feel like things can be lit up, almost like little markers for maybe a bird to follow. Like, say that there's like a piece of a tree that's lighting up and it's shiny, and the bird goes and flies over there, and they have to pass by a human on the way there. And so maybe that and then the spirit might kind of whoosh through the person's heart in that moment, and then they're like, oh, I'm thinking about so and so. Oh, look at that bird. I wonder if
Mm.
that's them sending that to me. And that's totally. I feel like it's that intricate, but it happens in such an instant.
So it's just the little things that we feel on a really soul level when we just know we don't even need verification. It's like, okay, that was that I felt the energy, what I used to feel maybe when that presence was around. Yeah,
Yes.
that's nice. Those signs are always appreciated and comfort people, of course. And Ryan was saying that there are videos on YouTube where the dogs are sleeping on the owner's grave who had died, and they appear to be upset.
Oh,
I've seen some of those too.
yes. That's interesting because I thought about that whenever I answered the question on my recent video about grieving animals, and that was so animals either adapt to their environment or they die. And so so I have described it as, this is kind of like my newest analogy with this, which I love, because think about a species who is dependent on another species for its needs. And the species dies off, and the one that was dependent on it is like, oh my God, what do I do? So it's kind of like in that zone of like, well, I'm going to either have to find another subspecies to get my needs met, another owner, or I'm going to die with my owner, you know?
Wow.
So it's more along those lines rather than experiencing. It's sort of like an animal, all of a sudden something's gone and they don't understand. But it's not like the deep loss and grief. But it looks like that through our eyes, through our lens, because we would be devastated.
Right, of course.
Huh?
Oh, it froze for a second. I
Oh.
didn't get that part. But yeah, no, that makes sense to us. We think, oh my goodness, they must be ripped apart. Yeah, of course we feel for the animals who are left behind by humans, because usually it's the other way around, of course.
Thanks, Ryan.
Oh, Ryan says that was a good answer.
Yeah, that's animals are pretty awesome to be balancing our heavy emotions here.
Mhm. What do you think about? I always hear the term, and I'm sure we've all heard this term, the rainbow bridge. Everyone talks about the rainbow bridge. Your pet went over the rainbow bridge when it passed away, and I don't particularly know what it's about because whenever I've looked into that, it's obviously after a pet has died, and I don't even want to read it because I'm a mess. So I just go, all right, whatever, the rainbow bridge. Okay, that's cool. I'm gonna go cry in the corner now. Um, so, well, can you talk about that? About what that means to you?
This is a good question because I haven't been asked these questions like this before. So I love that it's allowing me to be creative with it and tap into whatever.
Mm.
So I feel like the rainbow bridge comes from, it's God's promise, that the rainbow, that's what it represents. And so it's the promise that we will see them again someday, that we will see our pets again, because a lot of times people have a real hard issue with, will they be there to meet me when I die? Will we meet again? I don't want, it's that loss. It's that trying to cope with the loss. And so the rainbow bridge is an ultimate promise to all pet owners that they're waiting for you. I have chills right now saying that.
I know. I almost have tears in my eyes. I've never heard it put that way. I always just, I hear it as something that they cross or use to cross over, and that's not very comforting. I like this answer better. I'm going to go with this one. Wow, that's beautiful. So the promise
Yes.
that we'll see them again. That's simple and beautiful right there. That's all we need.
Yes.
Um, I'm also wondering about service animals and animals that are in that position too, because obviously all animals seem to be in service and helping us evolve. But I'm curious about the ones that are really working dogs, or whatever you would like to call them.
Yeah, these animals are ultimate guardians. They come in very focused. Um, they have a mission and they don't want to waver from it. I mean, they have this energy that I mean, it expands. I mean, all animals have like just different energy in general, but um, it's sort of like this. The energy that I get from predominantly most therapy dogs is, I'm here for you. I'm here. You're safe. I've got you. Like if you fall, I have you. And that's like that across the board of our entire planet is something that we ultimately need to believe, which is why I feel like there's across the board so many service dogs, because we're in need of that sort of the reassurance that, hey, if we fall, if something happens, we have a being to trust that actually is all heart, you know, and they can be a guardian of love and it not be like this guardian with like a bunch of walls, you know, like the
That
heart.
almost makes me think of service animals are almost like the archangels of the animal world. That's what it's kind of making me think of. The more of the, I mean, not that they're higher than the other ones, but I'm picturing them with this angelic archetypal energy. You know,
Yes,
wow.
and it's actually most service dogs are as what I like to call life path animals. And they are the higher, it's
Mm.
like the ascended master form of the animal world, because they come in to deal with core issues in our lives, and they're the special ones. They're the ones that when you look into their eyes, like there's a telepathic connection, and it's like no other animal that you've ever had, and they're rare. They won't come in a whole lot, you know.
Hmm.
um, you'll see like maybe hundreds of animals and maybe see like only a handful of these animals, but you can recognize them instantly because everyone loves them. They have this magnetic personality that draws, because they need that so they can heal and work on many people, whether it's your friend coming over or whether it's a stranger on the street, that the stranger on the street's like, oh, I need to have kisses from you in my life. You know, they
Hmm.
just they draw people in, and so they are, and they work with us on the biggest issue that we have that stands in the way of our true self.
Wow.
So
So our shadow aspects and all of that, right?
yes, like so for instance, like I had a life path that crossed over, and he represented pure emotional presence for me. Like 100%, I could be emotional as ever because I felt like if I was emotional, I would push people away and no one would be there for me, but he was there for me through the hardest of the hard, you know, and he proved to me that it's possible that people will be there. So he was the beginning
Mm.
of this journey that I would embark on, where I would meet people like you guys, you know, like Teal Tribe, who would just be there, you know.
Right.
So
So he
that's an
helped you kind of trust and do all that.
yeah.
Beautiful.
They're therapy dogs, therapy slash life path.
Life path dogs. I never thought of it that way. Wow, that's. John, can you talk about your question? I'm not sure if I understand what you're asking.
Yeah, I just see a lot of people walking around with, and they have their little tag on their back, service dogs, and they're not a service dog. It's not a guide dog or whatever. It's someone's pet chihuahua, or it could be
I've
any
seen
type
that
of,
before. Yeah, I've seen it before
just so
too.
that they don't have to leave the dog at home. They want to take the dogs with them, have their dogs with them all the time. To me, that seems like a big abuse of the service dog designation.
Hmm. It definitely, I mean, it can be considered that, especially from the standpoint of the organizations who maybe do service dogs. They just want those who actually need the service dog, but there may be people who do this to their animals because they have a deep need to have a being with them, to that they don't want to go through the day without without their animal. You know, so it's kind of like an excuse for them to have them with them, which I think I don't mind, if people want to do that, if they love their animal that much that they don't want to separate from them. But it's definitely, I don't know that it takes away from the service dog industry. It's just maybe a different way to go about it, and maybe they should have something different for that. Maybe like mental health dogs or something.
I was gonna say, because you know what, it's hard to really judge, because I know that a lot of, like, I know about social anxiety and how some dogs can ease that, but on the outside someone may look at you and go, you don't have anything wrong with you, so then it's really hard to judge it, to know why they're actually doing it. Maybe some people are doing it for selfish reasons or what have you, but I think sometimes there's a hidden illness, like you said, a mental illness.
Well, a lot of what I see is, I worked in the prison system forever, and at our unit, we did the first year of training for guide dogs of Texas, and we had usually white labs, or we had some black labs, but mostly, the yellow labs or whatever they call them. We did the first year of training, and then if they passed through that, they'd go to advanced training. But there, I see over on the base over at Lackland, where I do my part-time, my fun money, I see a lot, people traveling around, retired military or whatever, or retired, and so instead of leaving their dogs in their trailers, that they, because they have their little campers that they travel around with, they just say, oh, they throw a little patch over, and not all of them even look real like service dog tags, just something somebody picked up somewhere, and they know nobody's going to question them, and they just use them so they don't have to leave them in their camper, and that's parked there, 100 yards away or whatever,
Yeah, I can. So animals who haven't technically gone through the training, that they just slap something on them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's always, I see them, and every day 2 or 3 of them will come walking through the exchange or so while I'm there, and I see them. It could be a poodle, it could be a bulldog, it could be a chihuahua, and they all have their little things of some sort of another that says service dog on it. But if it was, most time it's with a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and who really watches out for their babies. I understand that. If it was a service member, I understand service member. Dogs have a very healing effect and stuff. But I just see these and I said, gosh, why do so many people abuse the service dog designation?
Probably because they want to be cool like the service dogs. That's my that's my guess, is that they want to have their dogs to be cool in service, and then they can have their dogs come with them.
So yeah, that makes sense. It's an importance thing. Too cool for school. All right, well, that questions, and afterwards we can have more of a private circle session. So, yeah, thanks everyone for watching and being a part of this, and thank you, Kara, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.